It's time. It's episode 47, the ATM podcast. Martin Devlin, Mark Watson. So much to talk about. Football ferns tonight. Sellout stadiums for the World Cup. We've got the All Blacks Wallabies, what are happening this weekend. The Warriors fans, the best in the country. Erika Fairweather, you're going to put perspective on that. Today in 1981, the Waikato versus Springbok tour match was called off, amongst others.
Apologise to me!
Let's start with the football ferns tonight, mate. History could be made. A win into the knockout stages for the first time. A senior team, a New Zealand senior football team could be doing that. How good?
Yeah, look, remarkable. I think the Women's World Cup has presented itself beautifully. Kick-started last week with that very, very good victory by our women's team. A real sense of nationalism. A great goal, brilliant goal, and really just set this World Cup alive. Look, I was lucky enough to go along on Saturday and watch the United States play Vietnam, and I've got to say Eden Park presented itself beautifully. Couldn't complain at all. I found it really accessible. In fact, I've probably been a bit harsh on Eden Park, and it was a timely reminder of just how far that ground's come. The only criticism I did have, Martin, and going on a bit of a tangent here, is still the quality of food that you can buy. It's still just too much junk food, in my opinion. But outside of that, it's been remarkable. And let's hope that this women's team can get it done tonight, and we can qualify for the next round, get on a run, get that momentum going, and just doing something remarkable that this country so often does. Where we just take everybody by surprise. We saw the basketball team back in 2004 reach the semi-finals, didn't we, of the World Basketball Championships. I mean, the All Whites 82 was sort of on par, I think, when there was only 24 countries, and we had to travel 67,000 miles to do it. We won America's Cups. We've just done extraordinary things when we least expect it, and so why not now? I will say, though, Martin, I was probably a little bit disappointed by the actual standard of football, though. I maybe expected a little bit more. I saw a much improved standard of football last night between Italy and Argentina, but some of the football that I've seen has been, a little underwhelming. And I guess that's probably because I've watched so much English Premier League football. And I don't expect the game to be played at the same speed as the men's. I don't expect the same sort of power on the shots, but I just thought some of the basic skills would be a bit better. And I was probably looking at that New Zealand team particularly. You watch women's swimming and it's on par with the men's. You watch women's golf in terms of the technical side of it, and it's on par with men's sport, and same with tennis. But I guess that's been my only sort of criticism. But then in sitting back, it's economies of scales. I started to realise, look, it is what it is. And when you get two teams, it still works. They're still trying to play the same sort of way. And I've got to say, I encourage people to get along, watch these games. We are hosting this, and the fact that we got 30-odd thousand last night to watch Italy, Argentina, I think is a credit to the people of New Zealand. The fact there was 40,000 for the United States-Vietnam game was credit to the people of Auckland. And again, hopefully, clearly a sellout tonight. No complaints here, Martin. I think it's been a wonderful spectacle. I follow websites around the world, Martin. Everybody's reporting really positively on it. There's been nothing really negative. And like I say, I think the grounds here in New Zealand, for as much as we criticise them, when they're all done up in the World Cup colours and all the advertising's taken away, they present themselves really, really well, and all the facilities look world class.
Look, sellout tonight, sellout on Thursday, 22,000 in Wellington for Costa Rica versus Spain on Saturday night, which was just remarkable. 30,000 Eden Park on a Monday night for Argentina versus Italy. No one can start talking or complaining about lack of ticket sales or lack of interest. Erika Fairweather, you mentioned the...
Sorry, Mark, just on that though, however, we did have the... Farah Palmer Cup on the weekend. There was about two people.
I didn't want to bring this up.
There were players and their mothers.
I didn't want to bring this up because you know what the problem here is, mate. The problem is, and this is what I fear, Mark, is going to happen once the Football Women's World Cup finishes. That you've got administrations in charge who don't have a bloody clue. Last year, the Black Ferns sold out Eden Park. New Zealand Rugby's answer was to throw $20 million at women's rugby and tell us there was this explosion in popularity as the fastest growing sport in the world. I have watched Super Rugby Opiki, no crowds. I watched the Black Ferns versus United States from Ottawa, no spectators. I tuned in to watch a bit of the Farah Palmer Cup, no spectators. You've done nothing, New Zealand Rugby, at all to bring that audience back. What is your new plan after spending $20 million? And I fear New Zealand football, unless they've got a really good, active, achievable marketing plan in place, that once this tournament finishes, that there won't be any audiences again for it.
Well, I'm just wanting to know where all these female journalists from Stuff and News Hub are, and why they're not bringing their families along, and why they're not out there watching it, and all of these other, even some male journalists who, in my opinion, was just nothing short of virtue signalling, telling us how it's the next big thing. I just want to know where they are. Why are they suddenly not turning up to this game? What, were they sick this week? Oh, they'll probably turn up next week though, Martin.
Well, no, this is it. But the reality of it is, and I'm wondering, Mark, whether or not it is the event and the occasion that draws these crowds in, because.
Oh, look, of course it is, Martin. I mean, you put a World Cup around it. It's a novelty. I went on Saturday because it's a novelty. I went on Saturday because I wanted to say I've been to a Women's World Cup, and I was curious. And I came away and exceeded my expectation. Now I can always say I've been to a Women's World Cup. And I think that's the same thing. Put World Cup around it, and I think it naturally creates a false economy.
So what I'm just saying is stop buying into this false narrative. These things get reported in our mainstream media press like they're actual fact. Like somebody says, an explosion in women's rugby, it's the most popular growing sport in the country. This garbage is reported on the front page as though it is an actual fact, and yet no one is saying anything about the fact that there has been no one turning up to women's rugby since that final. What are we allowed to talk about this? Where is New Zealand rugby on this, Mark? Where are they? Why are they hiding? They spend so much on marketing promotions. They've got more staff down there than most sports organisations in the world, and yet there are no spectators going to these games.
No, I know, and you jump on the website. So I was looking on the Auckland Rugby website the other day. I just wanted to see the Auckland NPC side, and I wanted to see also the Canterbury NPC side. I was looking through Bay of Plenty because I thought a friend's son might be playing, and it's funny how the women's teams now get the same billing. They're all on the front pages of these websites. We're still told to believe that somehow they're on par, that the same level of athleticism still exists, and it clearly doesn't. Look, even with this FIFA Football World Cup, you're not going to hear anybody. I've just come out and said, look, I've been a little bit disappointed with the standard of the football. I think there's a clear difference between the top teams and the rest. And as I said, I thought Italy last night were really, really good. I think my pick, by the way, for the Women's World Cup is Japan. I'll say that now. But, every referee's brilliant.
No play acting, no diving.
No one's going to criticise the referees. No one's going to criticise the players. No one's going to criticise women's sport. But at the same time, they want equity. At the same time, they want equality, except they don't want the criticism.
Apologise to me!
Erika Fairweather, what does this mean taking bronze at the 400-metre freestyle at the World Aquatics Champs? What does this mean?
Means that she's probably fourth at the Olympics next year in Paris. A stunning result to pick up a medal at the World Championships. Look, there are just some sports that are just harder than others, Martin. And swimming, I'm often asked, and I've been lucky, I've experienced a lot of sports in my lifetime at a pretty high level. And I always say this, I think swimming's the hardest of all of them. And you would have heard me say this on your show a number of times. It's like, I always compare it to golf. You can play all the golf you want, but unless you've got a really good swing, great temperament, you're never going to shoot a low score, and swimming's the same. You've got to be technically good. It's a brutal sport. You're an elite athlete from the age of 11. Erika Fairweather becoming just the fourth swimmer in history to break 4 minutes. She's got some work to do, clearly, to shut down Ariana Titmus, the great Katie Ledecky. They're going 355, 356. And probably the disappointment was Summer McIntosh, the 16-year-old Canadian who Erika ended up beating for that bronze medal. But it puts her in very exclusive company. Can she find another 2 seconds over the next 12 months between now and Paris? Fingers crossed she can. Look, I think she's genuinely got an outside chance of a medal at the Olympic Games. No different than Paul Kingsman in '88, Anthony Moss. Kingsman particularly stole a medal in the backstroke back there in '88. And so potentially, she is genuinely now a medal contender. I think for her, the fact that she has got into a final and actually stepped up in a final, where we've had New Zealanders who have swum PBs in semi-finals and then been a little underwhelming in the final. And I think Lewis Clareburt was case in point at the previous Olympics. And so with Lewis Clareburt alongside Erika Fairweather, potentially got 2 medals there waiting in Paris next year. But yeah, look, people are asking me, what event are you looking forward to the most this year? And I said, well, clearly looking forward to the Ashes. And I'd say actually the 400 women's freestyle at the World Championships. And they're looking at me like, I said, look, you've got Titmus, you've got Ledecky, and you've got McIntosh. And these guys are all 356, and this is just going to be a stunning race. And then clearly the Australian Ariana Titmus gets out there and breaks the world record. And yeah, I was blown away when I woke up and read the fact that Erika had won a bronze. And well done to her, and well done to her coach Lars. And what people won't realise is she also swims out of Moana Pool in Dunedin, the same pool that Daniel Lotus swam out of. Yeah, what a quality young lady, what a quality athlete. And yeah, probably lost on a lot of people because it's only a bronze medal, but I'd place that bronze medal at the World Swimming Champs ahead of any Netball World Championship, probably ahead of any Rugby World Cup Championship or Rugby League World Cup.
Oh, now you're talking idiocy here, mate. I mean, but that's what I expect from you. That's why.
Well, no, one's a global sport, Martin, and one's a minority sport.
Police, for God's sake, how many people play swimming in their lives? Just because it's done in every country, Watto, doesn't actually mean jack, mate.
Yeah,
I mean, you could say that rowing's more important because they have a world championship every 2 weeks. Come on, man.
The Rugby World Cup, the Netball World Cup, and Rugby League are like L&P, mate. They're world famous here in New Zealand. No one else even heard of them, Martin.
Apologise to me.
The 81 tour today.
Yep.
All of those years ago, the Waikato match was called off. This was the first time I think ever that a live match had been beamed into South Africa. So when the South Africans woke up and they wanted to watch that match, they saw a group of protesters on the field. Damn, that was a different time back in New Zealand then, man, wasn't it? What can you remember about it?
I remember tax on the ground, I think, in Waikato. I think that's the reason they called that one off.
And a plane was circling, if you remember, mate. There was a plane circling as well. And they were worried.
The flower bomb,
No, the flower bomb was at Eden Park later on. So this was a separate plane flying, that they were worried about whether it was going to crash into the stands or something, I think. And a terrible amount of violence afterwards when those protesters left the field and were attacked by rugby fans.
I always remember the Waikato game. I think, from my recollection, that part of the reason why they couldn't play is the protesters had put a whole lot of tax on the ground. It was young. What was I? I think I was about 11 at the time, 10 or 11. I was just really starting to understand sport. I remember the second test losing broadcast coverage because protesters had gone up and damaged the television tower up there in the Waitakites. Always remember the flower bomb test at Eden Park. Referee Clive Norling playing about 9 minutes of extra time, and Alan Houston kicking from 55 metres out. I think New Zealand Māori should have beaten or tied with the Box at a game played in Rotorua. There was a drop goal or a drop goal that went over that was deemed by the referee to have not gone between the uprights. And I think New Zealand Māori ended up losing that or drawing it. I can't quite remember what the outcome was. But yeah, a lot of memories from that. I think one of the things that resonated with me and always reminds me of that tour was the fact that, I got into triathlon a little bit later, and Erin Baker was clearly, I still think one of our greatest ever female athletes. And she was on the front lines of those 1981 Springbok protests, and she was arrested. And that actually affected her ability in her career to go to the United States and race because she had a police record. And always remember that. And, I think that was it. Normal people went out there and ended up getting convictions simply for what they believed in was the right thing to do. Probably the closest I think New Zealand's ever been to civil war, sort of, post the Treaty of Waitangi. And I think we didn't learn lessons in 76 with the Olympic boycott, but I think we learned a lot of lessons after the 1981 tour.
Yeah, you think about it now, don't you? Think about it all these years later, and if that was the case and there was a country that had an apartheid system, I mean, there's just no way in hell that they would be touring this country.
Apologise to me!
All right, let's wrap it up with the Warriors, mate. Just gets better and better. Are these the best fans in New Zealand, do you think, for any sports team? I've always rated the Phoenix fans. I always thought the loyalty that they bring, the chanting and everything else, that yellow fever. I think the Warriors have surpassed this now.
Yeah, look, I think New Zealand fans have always had a bit of a barrier up. We're not ones that sing. We're ones that sort of a little bit sheepish. If you're the one that tends to sort of be so passionate, you're sort of almost mocked a little bit. And I think what the NRL has done, and I think it's part of the NRL as much as anything, it's part of this whole brand, isn't it? There's this tribalism that exists with all clubs. And I think people go out there and they're not afraid now to express themselves. And they're finding that they're not just individuals, that it's a collective group who want to be part of this, who want to celebrate, who want to have some joy. And I also think, look, I'll always say rugby league, I think, is more of a blue-collar sport. And I think sport offers people just a real escapism. It's that happy place. It's that happy time. And there's nothing better than a winning team. And I agree with you. I mean, I think rugby fans could learn a hell of a lot from rugby league fans. I think rugby could learn just a hell of a lot from rugby league at the moment. And isn't it nice that sort of the so-called minnow that has so long been the minnow sport between rugby and rugby league, it's now rugby league that is showing rugby union the way forward. And Yeah, look, it's just a really, really wonderful time for the Warriors. It's a wonderful time for rugby league. There's a real sense of nationalism. Every week this team plays and every week this team wins. And so, yeah, look, it's, I started the season, as you know, Martin, very, very cynical. I wasn't convinced that this season would be any different from last season. I've got to say, man, they used to have the slogan, when DB Bitter was sponsoring, loyal to the bitter end. Well, I tell you what, mate, those fans have been absolutely loyal to the bitter end. And it's just a reminder too that to all fans out there that, stay loyal, that, you've got to go through you've got to sometimes learn how to lose to sort of learn how to win, and they're certainly enjoying it at the moment.
All right, a whole chat. We've just saved the best bit to last. All Blacks versus Wallabies this weekend, mate. Go on, you excited about it? Go on, the Bledisloe Cup, Watto!
Yeah, look, I just hope that they pick the same team that they picked against South Africa, and that we just get some continuity and we can see whether these guys can step up and reach that level of intensity. Because I think you should ignore what the Wallabies have done against Argentina, the way they were beaten up badly against South Africa. This will be a very different Wallabies team. They will lift themselves, and they'll lift themselves in that first 20 to 30 minutes. I think the only change you might see, I think you might maybe just see a change in the outside backs. Do they put maybe Bowden on the bench and maybe give Will Jordan a chance at fullback and then potentially open up a spot for another winger just to sort of see how that works? But really outside of that, I can't see too many changes. But look, I think the All Blacks should get the job done and should get it done comfortably.
Devlin.
Tomorrow! And Queen's Park Rangers have won it!
The Platform.